My name's Mike Edwards. Been racing motorbikes since age of 21, which was in the black and white days, starting in 1981. Raced all sorts, everything you can imagine, all over the place, all over the hockey. Well, the partnership with Kramer, really, it was through Eddie Roberts, which I've known Eddie for a million years. I've raced his TZ350 a few years ago, and when he took over the importership of Kramer, it was a natural thing to get me on the bike, I suppose. So Eddie has wanted me to become like an ambassador, really, for the brand, and help to promote the bike, and that's kind of ultimately where the association with Kramer come. I met Marcus Kramer probably about 10 or 12 years ago, something like that, maybe a bit more, not long after he first set up the Kramer company, and I went to the factory because I was still racing in SuperMono at the time, and that's kind of where he comes from. His racing stock is SuperMono. The bike, over the years and experience that I've gained, you can sort of spot a good one straight away. And I've sat on a lot of pigs over the years, so sitting on this was just superb. I just knew it was going to work for me straight away. Well, recently I've literally just come back today. We're on the way home from Almere, Andalusia and Jerez, and I had 3 days, glorious days at Jerez on the Kramer, running it in, getting used to the bike and showing it to a few very interested people. The track day was run by an Italian outfit called Gully Racing, and there was a lot of lip smacking, shall we say, and they were very, because they like stuff like this, and it just went down a treat. Well, the initial time I went out on the bike, obviously it's a brand new thing, of how it felt very firm, very taut, and it's a weird sensation that you go through. You sometimes have to sort of get going on a bike, and because you have to run them in, or had to run this one in, I stayed out for at least 3 sessions, 3 20-minute sessions on the bike. And it's hard work when people are coming hooning past you and you want to get involved, and you're kind of having to kind of bumble around, keeping the RPM down, not labouring the motor, etc. So the bike felt a little bit out of sorts, if you will. As soon as then I got to the end of session 3 and session 4 onwards, when I could start working the bike, it all just like it started to mesh, and it just felt perfect. Over the 3 days I was at Jerez, I did very little to the bike in the way of setup. As it comes out the box was kind of where I would start with the bike. If I wanted to go a lot harder, I might have to start doing a little bit of fiddling with stuff, but as a base setting, it was kind of put petrol in, go riding. Basically, I think the upside to the bike is it has a lot of adjustability built into the bike. That doesn't mean that you immediately start fiddling. I would suggest use the base setting of the bike as your starting point, get comfortable with it. But first of all, I would always suggest with people, for instance, when you get in a car that you've not been in before, the first thing you're going to do is adjust the seat, alter the rake of the steering wheel, and get the ergonomics of the bike so it kind of fits you. And simple things, I felt the bars were a little wide, so I adjusted the bars, the width of the bars, a slight amount of rake. I lowered the seat height slightly, which you can do on the Krämer, you can alter the seat height. So that sort of tweaked it a little bit, and then I thought, well, the next thing is just leave it alone, get going on the bike, and then see how it feels. And I effectively did next to nothing to it. I had 3 days on the bike and was turning some pretty good laps and was happy with it. Well, to be honest, the Kramer SuperMonos, which this is kind of the bigger brother of, have so many little features on the bike which are really well thought out. And it was the culmination of them is you're riding a bike, or I knew I was riding a bike which was developed as opposed to just created and just knocked together. And it's all little things like on the seat hump, for instance, on the seat unit, which is the fuel tank obviously, is they have little sliders on the side, so if the bike does ever go down, you can replace the sliders instead of destroying the tank, etc. As I said, the adjustability I liked about it too. It was kind of all there, all marked up for you, so that there was very little to sort of run astray. You couldn't get it wrong really. And the brakes, I was particularly pleased with the brakes. I mean, at the end of the back straight at Jerez, the limiting factor was me. I was pulling hard on the lever, and to a point where I couldn't physically hold myself on the bike anymore. And the bike, I'm sure, was looking up at me as if to say, is that it? Kind of, I was the limiting factor. So there's so much more to come from the bike. I can't wait to I'm going to Portimao next month, and I think that's a track which I will absolutely love. Well, the basic specification of the bike, it's the KTM 890 motor, the twin cylinder motor out of the Super Duke. It's got, on this particular model, the 890RR, it's got Penkel conrods, pistons, lightweight titanium valves, and the idea there is so that the motor can spin up faster and carry more engine RPM safer. So now it can go up to 12,000, where I think the previous motors, the previous generation were like about 10,500, so you've got a bigger rev spread of power. Talking of power, it's 138 brake horsepower, 142 kilos, and 100 newton meters of torque, which is a great sum when you put it that way, when you write it down. So its power to weight ratio is high. The chassis is stiff, it's strong, it's got white power front and rear suspension, Brembo brakes, latest spec brakes, Dimag wheels. Literally, if you had a pad and paper and went along, you couldn't really spec it up much more. It's put petrol in, go racing sort of machine. The thing about the Krämer, the specification of the bike comparing it to a Supersport machine, is you've got to remember a Supersport bike is inherently, it's a road bike. No matter how much you heavily modify them, they still hark back to a road bike. So you have to do quite a lot of work to make them extract the best out of them. Well, this is coming from the other end of the spectrum. This is from the drawing board up, is a race bike essentially. So this feels more taut, I would say, out of the box. Performance-wise, there's going to be a little give and take, I think, one way or the other. The strong point of this is the torque of the bike and the ability for it to jump out of corners. That will sort of break the toe from a lot of people. I think at Jerez there was a couple of R6s I was out with, and I was catching all of the R6s, some which was stock sport bikes, so I was catching very quickly. So I know the bike will be very, very competitive. Well, the GP2 class will be fabulous for it, for one. I think it will run at the front of that class in itself, but I think it will be right up there in the Supersport class as a whole. Whether it will be able to win overall is another story. I'd like to think it could do. It's certainly got the specification. The feel of the bike is kind of there. Now with the new updated motor, I think it's got all the sort of the right credentials to cut it and do the business. Well, I was talking to a few guys at Almere and they were kind of riding like full spec BMWs, ZX10s and so on. And they've kind of blinged them up as kind of much as they want and can, but don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with them bikes per se, and they're very fast, they do all the business. But a modern 1000 now is bloody hard work to ride. You know, you've got 200 plus horsepower, you know, thick end of 200 kilos. Even if you strip them down, they're going to be 180, sort of 190 kilos. So it's a lot of weight to move, a lot of power, and they are physically hard work to ride. By comparison, this is like 60 kilos lighter, not that much far behind on power when it comes to it, and it's so much easier to ride. So I think the customer, the perfect customer to this, is the guy who's kind of fed up riding the thousands. No matter what thousand they get, it's not ticking their box anymore, apart from it's hee-haw down the straight. From then on, it's hard work. And I think the ideal customer for this is more like the upper market track day guy who fancies something different and something which is very rewarding to ride, and it is rewarding to ride. I loved it.